Today we can start with a new topic in the central nervous system, that is meningitis. So meningitis, the name indicates it's an inflammation of meninges, right? So we can see the definition. Meningitis is an acute inflammation of the protective membranes, collectively known as meninges, that is the covering of the brain and spinal cord. So meningitis, it's an acute inflammatory reaction or the inflammation of the protective membrane of the brain, that is the meninges. Meningitis can be life-threatening condition because of the inflammation, proximity to the brain and spinal cord. Therefore, the condition is termed as medical emergency. So it affects the brain. So that's why it is life-threatening. Okay, the conditions may be severe when the lesions are or when the infections are complicated. The conditions become critical. The death may occur. Okay, so that's why the meningitis is termed as a medical emergency. Causative organism of meningitis include bacteria, then virus, then protozoa. Okay, due to different factors, the meningitis may occur. So, usually the bacteria include streptococcal, then Neisseria meningitidis, Streptococci pulmonale, Haemophilus influenza, then Staphylococci, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Pseudomonas, Treponema pallidum. So all these organisms may cause this disease. Usually it is divided in bacteria, viral and fungal infections. Next is the types of meningitis. So the meningitis usually divided in bacterial meningitis, tuberculous meningitis, viral meningitis, fungal meningitis, parasitic meningitis and non-infectious meningitis. Meningitis may be acute meningitis and chronic meningitis. So the meningitis, it is divided in two forms, specially based on the organism that cause meningitis. Okay, that's why it is divided in bacterial, then viral, fungal, parasitic and non-infectious meningitis. It's based on the organism. Then meningitis may be based on the duration. It is acute and chronic meningitis. Okay, we can see how this disease is caused or how in which way the disease occurs. Okay, we can see the pathogenesis. The three major pathways exist by which an infectious agent gain access to the CNS. So first one, invasion of the bloodstream. The bacteria may enter into the blood and may reach into the brain. Bacteremia means the presence of bacteria in the blood. Then viremia means the presence of virus in the blood. Okay, so the invasion of the bloodstream, bacteria or virus, the invasion in the bloodstream. Second one, a retrograde neuronal pathway. For example, olfactory or peripheral nerves, the organism may enter into our body through olfactory or the peripheral nerves. Next one, direct contagious spread. So due to infections, they may be spread to the brain. For example, otitis media, inflammation of the ear, sinusitis, inflammation of the sinus, then congenital malformation. Due to these problems, the infection may directly enter into the brain. Okay, if this area is infected, the nearest area will be affected. So the microorganism may travel to the nearest area. So that's why brain will be affected in these cases. Direct contagious spread. Now we can move on to the pathophysiology of meningitis. So here you can see the pathophysiology of bacteria. Okay, and it may be similar with viral infection or the fungal infections. Okay, you just understand it is a pathogen. Okay, so due to any etiology, the pathogen may enter into the body, starts colonization and penetration of nasopharyngeal mucosal membranes. Okay, that leads to survival of bacteria in blood and transportation via circulation. So naturally, when any microorganism is enter into the body, what they are doing is they will survive there and they will start to multiply. So they will pass through different routes through bloodstream. Okay. Then invasion of the central nervous system. Through the blood circulation, they will enter into the central nervous system, and that area or in the central nervous system they will start multiplication, especially in the subarachnoidal space. Okay, so that leads to increased permeability of blood brain barrier. So that leads to release of cytokines and prostaglandins and leakage of plasma proteins. Okay, due to the inflammation. Okay, when there is multiplication of microorganisms occur, there will be inflammatory reactions. So that's why there will be increased permeability. Okay, so that's why the patient will have the release of cytokines, prostaglandins. All these are the mediators. Okay, so that leads to leakage of plasma proteins, that leads to cerebral edema, increased intracranial pressure and impaired circulation. Okay, the same way transendothelial migration of granulocytes and the monocytes will be present. So we knew that wherever there is microorganism, okay, that area immune reactions will be present. Okay, that's why there will be presence of granulocytes, monocytes, cytokines, prostaglandins, and the plasma proteins, edema, inflammatory response. Okay, so you just understand, when there is a microorganism is enter into the body, there will be an opposite reaction, right? Okay, every reaction has an equivalent and opposite reaction we have studied. The same way, when a pathogen is enter into the body, our body will be act against these pathogens. So that's why there will be all the monocytes, granulocytes. They will try to kill the microorganism, but if it is not possible, it will be multiplied and it affects very badly. Okay, so that's all regarding the pathophysiology. Okay, and then multiplication of the bacteria, that is mainly due to the their favorable environment. Okay, when our immunity is less, or if the surroundings is very good, there is high chance to multiplication of the bacteria or the virus or the fungal. Okay, so that is based on the surroundings and the favorable situations. So if the favorable situation is there, the fungi or bacteria or whatever pathogen will be multiply and it will cause the signs and symptoms. Now we can see the symptoms of meningitis. So the symptoms, it includes the headache. In the central nervous system, the first one is headache and altered mental status. Okay, so the patient may be confused, or the patient is not able to understand the real situation, and the patient may be drowsy. Okay, then ears, phonophobia. Phonophobia is nothing but it's a sensitivity to sound. Okay, the person is irritated to the sound. That's all. Okay, phonophobia. Next one, muscular. So in the muscular, the patient will have the fatigue and severe muscle pain. Usually the patient will say body pain, severe body pain. The next one, eyes. Dislike bright lights. Instead of that, we can say photophobia. Okay, the patient will have the photophobia. So that means sensitivity to light. The patient will not like the bright light. He always likes dark and less sound. Most of the meningitis patient will show these symptoms. Okay. In systemic, the patient will exhibit high fever, the temperature more than 100 degree Fahrenheit, seizure, there may be chance for the epilepsy. Then stiff neck. Okay, when we are assessing the neck movement, the patient will have the pain on the neck. Okay, the patient is not able to forward or bend the neck. So that is known as the stiff neck. Next one, sleepiness or difficulty. Sleepiness or difficulty in waking. Okay, most of the time the patient is able to the patient is interested to lay in the bed. Okay, not able to wake up from the bed. Next one, stomach. In the stomach, most of the time the patient will have the nausea and vomiting. Then in skin, paleness, spot or rash or blotchy skin. So usually this rash that occurs due to meningococcal meningitis. Okay. This rash is most of the time it is blotchy in nature. So it means that it is shade. Okay, it is not in the correct manner. When we are observing the petechiae, it will be a red spot, bright red spot. Okay, but it will be a shaded nature. That's all. Okay, so that is the symptoms of meningitis. There are two signs that is very important in meningitis. The first one is Kerning sign. Second one is Brudzinski sign. So Kerning sign, it is assessed with the patient lying supine. Okay, the patient will be lying supine with the hip and knee flexed to 90 degrees. The patient will be lying and the one leg will be flexed at 90 degree. Okay. In a patient with a posterior Kerning sign, pain limit passive extension of the knee. Okay, when we are trying to extend the knee, the patient will have the pain. Okay, the patient will have the pain if we are trying to move or trying to extend the leg from the 90 degree position to extend. Okay, so that time the patient will have pain. I hope you understood. You can see the picture. Okay, the child is there, the child is lying and the child position is 90 degree flexed. When trying to extend the leg, the patient have pain. Okay, next one, Brudzinski sign. Brudzinski sign means a positive Brudzinski sign occurs when flexion of the neck causes involuntary flexion of the knee and hip. Okay, so here what we are doing is we will allow the patient to lie on the bed and we will flex or bend the neck. Okay, so what happens? There will be automatic flexion of the knee and hip. So that is the positive Brudzinski sign. You can see in the picture. Okay. Regarding the complications, the patient may have encephalitis, deafness, epilepsy, hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus means there will be a fluid collection in the brain. Then cognitive deficits, the patient thinking ability may be damaged. Then loss of pupillary reflex, abnormal posture can be occur, then decreased level of consciousness. All these are the complications of meningitis. And next, we can move on to the diagnostic measures of meningitis. So actually, when we are assessing the data, we can collect the history of recent infections in the nose or in the ears. Okay, and sometimes it may direct entry. Okay, if there is any wound, okay, anything, the history you can assess. Second thing, you can assess eye examination. You can do, the patient will have the photophobia. Okay, ear examination you can do, phonophobia the patient will have, and the entry of microorganisms or infections in the ear. Then blood test is the blood test will helps to identify the microorganism, especially the culture. Then lumbar puncture is the confirmatory test for the meningitis. Okay, then EEG, especially in case of seizure, we will assess for the EEG. Then CT, MRI, X-ray. So all these are the all these diagnostic measures will help to confirm the disease condition. And the signs, clinical features and the signs, it's very important, especially the Kerning signs, Brudzinski sign and the neck stiffness. Okay. Usually our lumbar puncture test that is done in L3 and L4 level, and we will see for turbidity. Okay, is it clear or turbid? If turbid indicates it is a bacterial infection, and usually when we are taking the specimen, it will take in 4 bottles. Okay, first one for microbiological test, second one for pathological test, and third one for biochemical test, and fourth one we will preserve for the next use. Sometimes it may be useful. Then blood, usually we are doing for the culture. Then urine, there will be antigen detection, especially in case of